I do that, I'm going to hand you all packets of the exhibits that we intend on walking you through.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I will point out that the very first page of that packet is not an exhibit, it's just an extra copy, a small scale copy of the plan that was submitted with the application, just so that you all have the benefit of having that in front of you in case you need to look at it throughout the hearing. That is the same plan that was submitted with the application, so that is why I have not marked that as an exhibit. All right, so I would first begin by calling Mr. Melson. Melson, can you please introduce yourself to the board, stating your name, spelling your name, and your address, please?
Hi, good morning. Melson Muneses, that's spelled M-E-L-S-O-N, last name Muneses, M-U-N-E-S-E-S. My address is 512 Walters Street, Place. That's in Glen Burnie, Maryland, 21060.
How did you spell your last name?
Muneses, M as in Mary, U, N Nancy, E Eagle, S Sam, E Eagle, S Sam.
Muneses.
E-S-E-S.
That's correct.
Unessus. I got that one.
Now I do too.
Okay. Melson, and are you here today as an owner of Bethania Home Care?
Yes, we founded Bethania with my sister, Chico.
Chico's who is present and
I'll be
seated to your
Chico.
left, right?
Sorry.
No, I just want to clarify that she is the other applicant here with us today, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you have been involved in both the acquisition of this property and its development to date, correct?
Yes.
Can you just generally describe to the board your vision for this property when you first were looking at it before you even acquired it?
Yes. My vision actually in Bethania was the real home care for the aged population. When I asked my sister, I said, Chico, let's do this, because she took care of our grandmother. And I want to pass that through. And that's how we are as Filipinos, more compassionate. Anyway, so we were looking, and I found Carroll County, a very homey place. I said, this is the best one. This is the best place for all these old folks to have their last few years in their life rather than in an institution. So that's why I chose a home-like environment.
And can you just generally, you just kind of compared your vision to an institutional use. Can you just roughly walk us through some of the differences between what you think are the specifics of your model versus what we all consider a traditional assisted living facility?
Yes. More of I am at home rather than I am in the institution. If you can do things like in your home, we let it do it as long as allowed. Safe and allowed. We want these old folks to be more active, proactive in life. And that's really my envision. And that's why I picked Carroll County and Bell Road specifically. And I also designed the place as a home rather than a building.
And is it correct that on September 29th, 2005, you attended a BZA hearing that requested the original approval for a 16-bed assisted living facility?
Yes.
I'm just showing you, Melson, real quick, a copy of the written decision in that case, which has been marked by Applicant's Exhibit 1. That's the hearing that you were present for, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to ask that Applicant's Exhibit 1 please be entered.
We will accept that into evidence.
Thank you. Melson, after that approval in that case, is it accurate that you proceeded with the site development plan and remodeled the existing dwelling on the site that then became the 16-bed assisted living?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to turn you to what I've marked as applicant's exhibit 2, which is actually 2 photographs, okay? The first page you're looking at is an aerial photo showing the site, and the building on site is sort of marked by that little red pin. Does that accurately show what the property looks like today?
Yes.
Okay. And then the second page of applicant's exhibit 2 is a street view looking into the site from Bell Road. Is that also an accurate depiction of what it looks like today?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to ask that applicant's exhibit 2 please be entered.
And we will accept that into evidence.
Thank you. Melson, is it your request here today to construct a new structure that, on the property, that would accommodate an additional 16 beds?
Yes.
And can you just describe, you just kind of walk the board through the residential feel that you want to accomplish with this use, but can you generally describe the architectural plans for the new structure, what it would look like, what you plan for it to resemble?
Yes, it would look like just a big home. Same consistent vision or structural that I want, and like in the farm. And that's why I picked this, because most residents in Carroll County, they grew up in a farm. And I want them, every morning if they wake up, I said, oh, right, there are cows, we're in the farm, we're at home. And that's why I have the farmer in there. And not only that farmers help us feed us, but they are also there to help us. It's a win-win situation. They try to also clean our yard. They make hay. They have the cows. The old folks like to see the cows in the morning.
So what
Maybe some smell, but that's how it is. It's a farm.
And Melson, what you're speaking to is what I said in my introduction, which is that a majority of the property is leased to a farmer, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
and it's practically for nothing, but I just want them to be there because they're really helping us. They're feeding us. I hope people will realize that.
And is the intent that when the new structure is constructed, that still the balance of the property would remain actively farmed?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay. And the new structure that's being proposed has kind of an adjoining parking area to it.
Yes.
But really, it's oriented such that from Bell Road, it looks like the house is fronting Bell Road, and the goal would be to keep the architecture consistent with the existing dwelling on the site, such that if you're looking from Bell Road, it just looks like 2 sort of houses, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the current facility has 16 beds in 12 bedrooms in that house that is already on the site, correct?
Correct.
How many bedrooms will the new building have?
16 beds.
Okay. So it will be, this new structure will have all private rooms for each resident, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And will each of those bedrooms have a private bathroom as well?
Yes.
In addition to the bedrooms in the new structure, what other rooms do you plan on having within that structure?
There'll be a quiet room, we call it quiet room, where one can do his reading or reflection, whatever. There's the office. There is,
Kitchen.
well, kitchen, yes, of course. There'll be a small conference.
Will there be a living room?
Yes, definitely, yeah. Aside from all those normal things, kitchen, living room,
And
you know.
do you also have plans for a porch patio on the new
Yes,
structure as
very
well?
important for me. The porch, they can go out, spend time out in the sun. I really want them to live life. That's really my principle. Live life towards the end of their life rather than being put in an institution. I hate that, I'm sorry to say. I want them to have life. That's how it is.
And in addition to those kind of rooms that you just talked about being planned in the new structure, will there also be sort of temporary living quarters in case any employee should need to stay overnight for inclement weather or otherwise?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Now, your current facility accesses via Bell Road, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And are you intending on utilizing the same driveway for the new structure?
Yes.
In your experience at operating at that site, have you ever had a problem with vehicles being able to utilize the existing driveway?
Never, no.
And I think that was all. Now, I will say, just for the board's benefit, Machiko I'm going to call Machiko as a witness next. She is going to speak to a lot of the operational details and things, so I anticipate that at this point you may have some of those questions. So I just wanted to let you know that I will be calling her as a witness to talk through some of those details. But this concludes my questions of Mr. Munesis.
Okay, does anyone in the audience have any questions of his testimony?
Those are all, they're all
I
with me.
know, but I
Okay.
want to make sure that, I want to go through the
Just to be
process.
sure that that Machiko's daughter didn't turn against her and.
Board members, any questions of Mr. Munesis' testimony?
Just a couple if I can.
Go ahead.
First of all, thanks for coming. And this is just for informational purposes. I believe Bell Road is the demarcation point for city water and sewer, is that correct?
That is
One
correct.
side has it, one side doesn't? Or is this serviced by city water and sewer?
No, we still have a well.
You have a well?
Septic and
a
well.
septic system.
Yes, I think you're right, it's very close to the division. Because I know I saw a sewer line
side and-
about probably a good 300 or 400 yards away, 300 yards maybe.
Bell Road is the kind of dividing line between the corporate limits for the city of Westminster and the county. So on the other side of Bell Road from this site, it is city the properties that are within the city. I think it's a little bit of a distance before the actual public facility lines are available, but this property is served by private facilities. Yes.
So is that city limits on the east side of Bell Road, or is that the sewer and water service area? Because, or the environs, I should say.
That is the actual city limit. So if you look
Okay.
at what we've put in the packet as applicant's exhibit 4, the zoning map, the sort of gray shading on that map indicates corporate limits for the city. So the yellow and the brown are all county properties. And the big one, sort of in the middle with the 80 in the middle, that is our property, that's the subject property. And all of the surrounding yellow and brown are all county properties, but if you look at all of the gray, it sort of is,
Yeah, Bell Road is the kind of demarcation
Yes.
point. I thought it was. I just didn't know if it was relative to just city line or whether it's relative to this water service area. But apparently, because all of Wakefield homes have city water. and
yes,
sewer.
that's correct.
All right,
Yep.
understood.
Okay, board members, any other questions?
I'll ask questions of the surveyor.
Okay, yeah, we'll save those for Mr. Podolak.
Thank you.
Good, okay. Thank you very much for your testimony.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. I would next call Machiko. Machiko, can you please state your name, spelling your name, and your address for the record?
Okay. I'm Michiko Waminal, M as in Mary, I-C-H-I-K-O. And my last name is Waminal, W-A-M as in Mary, I-N as in Nancy, A-L as in Larry. And I live in 80 Bell Road, the same site.
And Chico, is it correct that you are the owner of the subject property?
Yes, I am.
And you are also an owner of Bethania Home Care, correct?
Yes,
And as Melson said, you are his sister, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Generally, you were here and you heard all of Melson's testimony today, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Everything he said, did you find that to be accurate?
Accurate, very accurate.
Okay. And can you just explain to the board sort of your background and your educational training and those sorts of things?
Okay. I am a nurse too, and I was working in the hospital before I did this. And I didn't realize that nursing was my passion because I went to school accounting first for 4 years and then went to another 4 years of nursing. So here I am. I landed to the best career that I thought.
Okay. And you said this in your introduction, but you and your family, you and your husband live on the site, correct?
Yes,
You actually live in the basement of the existing facility, correct?
yes,
Okay. And you work full-time for Bethania, is that accurate?
more than full-time.
Yes. Fair. Prior to Bethania opening at the location that we're talking about today, you also owned and operated an assisted living elsewhere in Carroll County, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And that was on Uniontown Road, right?
yes.
So approximately how long have you worked in the industry? And you can include your nursing experience when I say
Oh,
in the
yeah.
industry as well.
Okay. I did this for 25 years already. Whatever the age of my daughter, that's the age of my assisted living.
Okay.
So she grew up with the grannies too. And prior to that, I was working as a nurse for about 8 to 10 years before doing this.
Okay. And we're going to talk through some of the operational details of Bethania, okay? So Bethania Home Care is an assisted living that's registered and licensed by the state of Maryland,
Yes.
is that correct? Okay. And what levels of care do you offer?
I offer 1, 2, and 3 levels of care.
And those
and
are, sorry, go ahead.
until to the end.
So those are levels that the state kind of outlines, and then the state
Yes,
registers those and licenses those, correct?
correct.
Okay. And though, as part of the care for those levels, that includes 24-hour supervision of residents, is that correct?
Yes.
How many employees do you currently have total? Like employees, and then obviously you have owners who are very actively involved too. So total, how many employees do you have?
I have about 15
Okay.
of different shifts.
Okay. And your operation sort of works on 2 different shifts a day, correct?
Yes.
Right. So first, let's explain to the board, from 7 a.m. until 10 p.m., how many employees are working?
I have 3.
Okay. And from 10 p.m. until 7 a.m., how many employees are working?
1.
Okay. And in addition to the 1 employee working from the 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift, you and/or other employees are also on call, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And these shifts, those 2 shifts per day, that's 7 days a week, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, at the facility, there's also visitors allowed to come. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. When are visitors allowed to come?
Anytime, I always tell them, anytime you can come. But I discourage them to come at mealtime because my experience, when my grannies will see their family and they're eating, they'll say, oh, okay, I'm done, and will not finish there. So I always, tell them anytime they can visit.
And on average, approximately how many visitors are you seeing come to the site each day, on a given day?
Probably 5, 4, or sometimes there's nobody except for the agencies who will come.
Okay. so it's kind of hard to put an average on the visitors arriving per day
4, I would say.
for every day? For visitors?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, hold on. You can chime in a second. It's her turn to talk.
Okay.
Okay, so on average, you think you have about 4 visitors a
4
day?
visitors.
That's probably the most you would ever
The
see in a day?
most, yeah,
Okay.
5, yeah, 4 or 5.
Okay. And so you just said, you talked about the agencies, and we're going to get into that. So in addition to the employees and then the visitors, you also have different agencies that are coming to the site, correct?
Yes.
Can you explain to the board, like, what agencies are?
Yeah. You know, the nursing part, physical therapists, occupational therapists, they come to continue the rehabilitation of my older people. And sometimes I have the Bureau of Aging, you know, people from them, they come to and visit and, you know, just go to their rounds. My doctor for the home, he goes there like maybe at least once a month, but mostly more than that. The nurses and the aides for hospice, so they go there. Podiatrist, I have that too. And very seldom, X-rays, the X-ray company, they will be there to do some checks.
And approximately, if you can put an average on the agency representatives that come to the site, how many would you say a day, like on average?
On average, 1.
Okay. And I think you just spoke to this, but I'll just make sure that you did clearly. The state of Maryland also requires that you have an inspection from a nurse every 45 days. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's kind of included in your description of the
Yeah.
agencies that visit the site as well. Okay. So in addition, okay, so we have residents who live there, we have the employees serving the residents, we have visitors who might be coming, we have these occasional agency visits, and then what type of deliveries do you get at the site? Are you getting sort of your normal, what I'll call household deliveries of UPS, FedEx, Amazon, or are you getting any deliveries that are coming in really large trucks?
No, only the UPS, the Amazon vans, but no big trucks.
Okay. And approximately how often would you say that you're receiving a delivery at the existing site?
Probably 4 times a week,
Okay.
4 days a week.
Is there also occasion for emergency medical vehicles to need to access the site?
Yes,
Okay. Approximately, again, if you can say, approximately how often would you say that needs to happen?
probably once in 2-3 months.
Okay. And do you anticipate that this whole structure that you just described, because that was really speaking to your existing operation that you already have out there, do you anticipate that that whole structure will remain the same and or kind of be duplicated, I guess, for the new building?
Pretty much, it will be.
Okay, so you anticipate having the same number of employees for the new building, working the same shift structure, and all of that will stay the same. It will just be an additional building. So you would have, just to summarize and make sure I've got it straight, you would have 3 employees in the new building
Yes.
working that daytime shift and 1 employee working the nighttime shift in the new building.
Correct.
Okay. And you intend on maintaining your residents on site, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you're always basically on call.
On call 24 hours.
Now, in terms of talking about some of the patient details, that's where we're going to head next. Your residents are under 24-hour supervision, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And do you have some residents who may need an increased level of care because of like memory care, for example?
Correct.
Are they under an increased level of supervision beyond what
They
the norm?
are,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And do you have video surveillance in your common areas that gets monitored for the safety of the residents?
Yes.
Are all of the doors in the facility alarmed?
Alarmed.
And how do you sort of monitor visitors coming in? Like
We
if I
have a
came in-
logbook
Okay.
that they sign.
So any visitor coming in has to sign in.
Yes.
Is that the same for agencies? If a nurse is coming in, does she need to sign in too? Or you just kind of greet her and then she knows where
No,
she's
they
headed?
usually make notes
Okay.
in the chart, so there
Okay,
is a
okay, so
trace.
there's a chart that the
Yeah.
agencies are making their notes in.
Mhm,
All
yeah.
right. And does every room have a call bell?
We require them to do that.
And that is a service so that the resident can call any
Anytime.
employee at any point in time if they need extra assistance, correct? Okay. And are residents allowed to leave the building?
They are not allowed to leave alone. They have to be supervised. One of the staff have to be with them, or if the family comes to visit and they want them out, they can do that too.
And in the history of Bethania, have you ever had a problem with what I would call a wandering resident?
I did have one time, out of my 25 years, I had one time who went out and she was a walker. So, that's,
Okay. Is it fair to say that most of the activity on the site occurs inside that building?
yes.
Okay. Let's walk through some things that may occur outside. So depending on a resident's capability, it's possible, like you just said, that you might see a resident walking with supervision, either staff supervision or their family, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And they would probably be walking near the structures.
Yes,
Correct?
yes.
Okay. Do residents also have the opportunity to engage, if they're capable, in supervised gardening activities?
Oh, yes, they like that.
Okay. And does your facility also host a few outdoor picnic type events throughout the year where residents can engage with family members as well?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And those events are things that you invite all the
The
families
families.
to?
Mhm.
Okay.
That's when the family would be talking each other and, mingling each other.
Okay.
So, which is good.
There's no other outside activity that is generating any sort of noise or dust or odors, correct?
Correct.
Other than perhaps
Yes.
the leased farm space.
Correct.
Okay. And there's no nighttime outdoor activity associated with
No.
the use, correct? Okay. I think we've made this clear, but your intent is to operate the new structure the same way you're operating the existing
Yes.
structure.
Mhm.
Okay. On the plan that accompanied this application, we showed the access driveway as being 15 feet. You've had the benefit of operating this site for some years now. Have you ever seen or yourself experienced a problem with being able to access the site on the existing driveway?
No.
Okay. And as part of your operation, you have witnessed emergency medical vehicles coming in and out of the site, correct?
Correct.
Have you ever noticed that they have a problem
No.
coming and going? Okay.
No.
Is there, in fact, adequate room for cars to pass on the driveway?
Yes.
And you understand that if granted the approval of this board here today, you would still need to go through the site development plan through the county to receive approval to actually construct the new building, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Those are my only questions of Chico.
Okay, board members,
Some questions?
Mr. Caldwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarification, do you still currently own the facility, the assisted living facility in is it Uniontown?
Yes.
You own that as well?
Yes.
So then you'll be responsible for 3 assisted living facilities, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
May I answer that
Just
clear?
introduce yourself real
I'm
quick.
sorry.
Just say.
Melson Munesis again. I believe Mr. Cardlow meant about management. We have a manager
Yeah.
in that facility.
So you have a manager for,
Yes,
Uniontown
for the
facility.
Uniontown
okay. all right.
property.
So they carry on your duties 24 hours a day at that?
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay, I understand. Can you explain something about the shifts? I missed something there. There was a shift from 7 AM, is it to 10 PM or? To 10 PM, okay, that's a long shift.
10
So
to
that's,
7, 9 hours, 10 to 7, Chico.
The daytime one is 7 AM to 10 PM.
They're shifting.
Within that time?
Yes, there's also.
Oh. Chico, can you explain that?
Yeah. 7 to 10, in between that, there's like a 4-hour. 7 to 6, the person is relieved by somebody who is 6 to 10.
Part-time.
So there's a
Part-time.
total of, between 7 AM and 10 PM, there's a total of 3 employees, like, at any given time.
Yeah.
But within that window, there are, like,
Yeah.
employee
shifts.
shift changes.
Within those time periods.
Okay, so to cover 168 hours, you need 4.2 full-time equivalents, right?
You'd have to break down the math that you,
Well,
for me.
40 hours a week, assuming a 40-hour week for an employee, you've got 168 hours to cover, right?
Because again, that includes me. I
Right,
am
so
there.
you take up the 0.2 FTE, I presume, because you've identified there's 4 people over a 24-hour period.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Next question is, that number will double when you add this additional facility.
Correct.
Okay. And how long have you been operating the 16-bed facility at this location?
In the first Uniontown?
No, he's asking about
At
the
this
one.
At Bell Road?
Oh, Bell
location?
Road, we started 2016, 2017. I cannot remember.
16, I believe.
2016.
Okay, yeah.
I
So 9 years?
comment on 4 hour thing because
9 years, is that
4
correct?
hours.
Is it 9 years already? Yeah,
Double the
16.
Okay. Thank you very much.
that we have.
Any other Mr. Rolls?
Yes, I have a question. So your current traffic study that we're looking at here, is this based on the existing facility? Like now with 16 beds, or is this with the additional 16?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the
The
question?
traffic study here on the last Exhibit 6,
Oh, so, yes.
is this based on adding a 16 additional beds?
Yes, that is, but that's
This would
not,
be
just to
32
clarify,
beds.
that is not a traffic study. That Pete
Or-
Podolak is going to speak to that, and he just put that together based on trip generation figures, which are included in the traffic manual. He is not a traffic engineer, he is not a traffic consultant, but he did run the numbers just to see if this project would be required to go through a traffic impact analysis as part of the site development plan. So he's going to speak to that, but that I believe that Pete ran those numbers contemplating the 32-bed facility.
Right, so it hadn't been decided yet if there's going to be
Yeah,
an
that'd be a
additional
question for Mr. Podolak.
Okay, got it.
And I'm assuming he'll be the next witness.
Yes, he will
Process
be.
of
Yes, I just
elimination,
preemptively gave you the full packet so that you had it in front of you, but we will run through there's a few exhibits in there that we have not spoken to yet. And Pete will be speaking to those.
Last quick question is that, so for EMS emergency visits, it's 1 every 2 to 3 months now. Currently, right now, with the 16 beds, emergency EMS is 1 every 2 to 3 months. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then, say you anticipate that might double with double the occupants.
I think that's fair.
Okay, that's all I have.
Follow up.
Question?
No, I just want to reaffirm that, because that, respectfully, that sounds a little light as far as the number of EMS calls that would go there when the ambulance would come and do a transport based.
Senior
And I'm
facility.
sure that's very much influenced by the level of care of the
Correct.
census, but 1 to 2, that sounds really light, based on my
Very
experience.
light. There's even nothing in 6 months sometimes.
Not one EMS call?
Pardon?
Not one EMS call over a 6-month
No.
period?
No.
And you have a very healthy
Yeah,
assisted living
Correct.
population.
Correct.
Are you experiencing all 3 levels at the existing property, or are you expanding to include additional levels in the new property? Meaning, let me rephrase, Do you do all three levels of care in the existing facility? Or will you be initiating an expansion to include all three levels in the new facility?
All three.
Chico, he's asking, right now at Bethania, do you have all three levels of care?
Correct.
Okay, and you will just continue that in the new structure, correct?
Understood.
Include.
Okay, Mr. Caldwell.
One follow-up question, just for curiosity. How does the use portion of the property is currently used for agriculture? What kind of crop is grown there?
Well, the farmer has cows,
As cows, okay.
and they also grow hays on a portion of the property.
Okay,
Well, and just to be clear, Mr. Caldwell, it's not just the agriculturally zoned portion that's leased to the farmer. It's also a good bit of the R20 zoned portion.
Yes.
The property is split zoned, but the majority of it is farmed.
Yes,
so would I be right in saying it's, looking at the exhibit map you've shown here, the area to the left, I'm not sure where north is on this one, but the area to the left is farmed, and then a portion perhaps up around the barn is also farmed, is that correct?
yes. Looking at the front of the house,
Yes?
most of the area on the left side of the road
Barn.
is being farmed with hay.
Oh, I see, okay.
And the back of the existing facility right now, where the tile or the sewer reserves are, it's also fenced for the cow to come in. And I allowed that so that, again, they'll see the cows, and they wake up in the morning, so, okay, I'm in the farm.
Okay.
I'm
nice
at
thing.
home. That's really my purpose in there.
Okay.
And all the rest of the back portion and the barn is all farmers' territory.
So the last question is that no heavy farm equipment comes down that access road to your main building?
No.
There is a separate point of, if you look at.
There is
I
an
think that-
access, they have their own access. The
you-
existing road at the time we
Hold
bought.
on. If you look at applicant's exhibit 2, which is the aerial, I think that shows it a little bit more clearly. There's actually already an existing separate access point that the farmer utilizes to get to the barn
Okay.
and the farming area. So Mr. Caldwell, to answer your question, it would be correct that the farmer does not use the access drive for the facility.
Right,
Okay, understood. Thank you very much.
yeah, they have their own
That's good.
road.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Presents? Good. Any other questions? Thank you very much for your testimony.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you, too.
Thank you. I would next call Mr. Pete Podolak.
Good morning.
Chico, can you hand that down to Pete, please? Thank you. Pete, can you please introduce yourself, stating your name and address?
My name is Pete Podolak, P-O-D as in David, O-L-A-K. I am trading as Leon Podolak and Associates. I'm a professional engineer, registration number 19561, and I'm representing Michiko Wamanal and Melson Munesis.
Pete, is it accurate that you have appeared in front of this board to testify as an expert in multiple hearings in the past?
Yes.
I have included a copy of Pete's resume in my exhibit packet as applicant's exhibit 3. I would like to ask that Pete be qualified as an expert in the area of engineering and site design, but I'm happy to go through any questions that the board has, or if you would like me to ask him the qualifying questions.
We will go ahead and accept him as an expert witness in those fields,
Thank you. I'd like to ask that applicant's exhibit 3, that resume, please be entered.
and we will accept that into evidence.
Thank you. Pete, have you been present for the entirety of the hearing and heard all of the testimony so far today?
Yes, I have.
And you have been involved in the preparation and submittal of the plan that accompanied this application, correct?
That is correct.
Were you also present and involved in the BZA hearing, the original BZA hearing that you heard us speak to earlier today?
Yes, I was.
And you also helped the applicant through the site plan process to effectuate that approval, the past approval, correct?
Yes.
Okay. As part of your review and in putting together the plan for this application, have you had the opportunity to look at the zoning, natural features, and topography of the subject property and the surrounding area?
Yes, yes, I have. And we also have worked with the health department regarding the percolation tests. The percolation tests were done by another firm. We did some additional percolation tests for the existing facility, but based on the information and the soils testing that was completed, we're confident that we have enough sewage capacity to provide an additional 16-bed assisted living facility.
And Pete, since you went there, I'll ask you a few questions related to that now. Is it correct that if this approval is granted here today, that this applicant would still need to proceed through the site development plan process before they could construct the new building?
Yes.
And as part of that process, is it correct that the Carroll County Health Department conducts a review to confirm that there is well and septic capacity for any use?
Yes.
Okay. And this property, as Mr. Snyder asked at the beginning of the hearing, this property is served by private facilities. It is not served by public facilities, correct?
Correct. The property is located in the county, and it does not appear on this master water and sewer plan.
Okay. So it is not shown for service on the City of Westminster's master sewer or water plan?
Correct.
Okay. And so what you were speaking to is just the fact that as part of any new site plan process or amended site plan process for the new structure, you anticipate that you can receive health department approval for well and septic because you've already done some of those preliminary analysis.
Yes. It's my personal preference to make sure that we have the capacity, especially for sewage, before we, get into a lot of expenditures, going through a BZA hearing, submitting a site plan, paying the review fees.
Understood.
And so we typically, Melson and I, we evaluated this, and we actually made a couple submittals to the health department for input. And, we've all come to the conclusion that we have sufficient capacity on this site to support the bed.
Okay.
Other issues we can always work out at site development plan. Sewage is you have to go through, you have to have the soils. And so it's one of the more critical aspects.
Pete, in your opinion, do you think it would be fair to say that if this property were served by public facilities, the density potential would be much greater?
Absolutely, yes.
So you heard me in my opening statement talk about some of the density potential strictly under zoning, but really practically speaking, that's not possible because this property is served by private facilities and probably could never develop to that density.
Well, I wouldn't use the word never,
Okay.
but but at this moment in time, this snapshot in time, we don't have the luxury of extending the water and sewer facilities to the site.
Understood. Okay, so now I'm going to turn you, you've got the packet in front of you, Pete. I'm going to turn you to what's been marked as Applicant's Exhibit 4, which is just a copy of the zoning map. Can you just generally describe the zoning in the surrounding area?
Yes, the yellow portion, the front of the property is zoned residential R20,000. And with the R20,000 zone, I believe the county had anticipated a long time ago that the water and sewer facilities would be extended. Unfortunately, without the public utilities, it's very difficult to develop that property because a house with well and septic has a minimum requirement by MDE standards of 40,000 square feet. So with that being said, the back portion of the property is zoned agricultural.
And, okay, well, first, let me ask that I please enter applicant's Exhibit 4, a copy of the zoning map.
And we will accept that into evidence.
Thank you. Pete, turning you back to sort of just the general layout of the plan that we've submitted with the application, the request is for an additional one structure, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And in addition to the one structure, that you show a small parking lot area, is that also correct?
correct.
Can you explain to the board what the code required parking count is for this use and what our proposal shows?
Yes. So with respect to parking, the subdivision and development standards require a parking count of one parking space per 4 beds, plus 1 space per 2 employees, and if there's a resident family, then typically we would provide 2 parking spaces for the resident family. We do have a resident family, but they're already in the existing building, so we didn't include
They've been
that.
accounted for.
Yeah, it didn't include that, but based on the numbers, we essentially, combining both facilities, 32 beds, we ended up with a parking requirement of 14 spaces. And with this development and counting the existing spaces, we will provide 17 parking spaces. So we're well.
So we exceed the required
Yes,
parking
we
count,
ex-
correct?
Correct.
Okay. And this property is accessed directly off of Bell Road, is it not?
Yes.
Are you aware of whether Bell Road is a county-owned and maintained road?
Yes, I believe it is.
And if you know, is Bell Road constructed to county standards?
It appears to be.
Okay. So you heard Chico go through sort of the general vehicle types that are accessing this site. In your opinion, is Bell Road capable of handling the types of vehicles that you heard her
Yes.
speak to? Okay. As part of this request, we have noted an access drive variance. Now, without getting into the weeds, it is accurate, is it not, that this plan was approved, the site development plan was approved with a 15-foot wide access drive when the existing facility was remodeled?
Yes.
Okay. And so that is, in fact, what exists today, a 15-foot wide access drive with a wider entrance area.
Yeah, so what we had done for this facility, because the county also expressed some concerns regarding stacking cars on Bell Road. In other words, if someone's pulling out of the driveway, if you only have a 15-foot driveway, you don't have enough room for 2 cars to pass. So what we have done for this facility is we had constructed a commercial entrance. So the entrance onto Bell Road is 25-foot wide. We don't get to the 15-foot wide portion of the driveway until we are 65 feet from the edge of Bell Road into the property. So basically, we believe we have enough stacking for at least 2 cars. And in that 25-foot taper, that tapers back, which would allow cars to stack, yet allow, say, an emergency vehicle like an ambulance to still make the turn and enter the site. So I've gone through, at least in my short career, is, how much driveway is enough? The county standard for use in common driveway is 12 feet. However, 2 cars really can't pass on 12 feet, so the county requires pullovers and that sort of thing. In this case, we knew we didn't have this use is not a big trip generator. In other words, this is not a traffic-intensive use, assisted living. And so we wanted to make sure, A, that we could get ambulatory vehicles in without any hindrance. We also wanted to provide enough room for 2 vehicles to pass. we designed the driveway with a 15-foot width, and quite honestly, that's just enough, okay, to get
Pete,
two
pause.
vehicles.
Because you were just saying it, but I want you to look at applicant's exhibit 5 in that packet. So you just spoke to the fact that 2 vehicles can pass in 15 feet width, correct?
Correct,
Is
correct.
Applicant's exhibit 5 is a photograph showing 2 vehicles passing on the driveway, correct?
That is correct. I mean, we're talking about 2 vehicles, automobiles. Of course, you can get larger vehicles. You may get a big truck or something. But the way the driveway is laid out, it's a straight shot, and you can see in this photograph that you literally have sight distance from Bell Road all the way to the house in the back. So the fact that we have a wider entrance would allow, for example, a UPS truck to make the turn into the site, and if he sees someone coming, he would just stay there and they would pass, and then he would go. So we kind of have the benefit here that you can see what's coming in and what's coming out. The same also applies to the existing facility. There's a circular turnaround, and so someone leaving, and again, maybe another big truck, can also see who's coming in. So you can stage things that way. For most vehicles, you can pass.
And Pete, sorry, but I just want to, while you're talking about it, this is also grass shoulder. So in a worst case scenario, somebody could just pull off onto the shoulder if they did not have the forethought to pause.
Yes, that is, and that's a good point, that yes, if we had an emergency situation where someone was in the middle of the driveway and an ambulance is coming in, the
Now-
car could easily put 2 tires on the grass.
Now, in looking at this photo, though, of applicant's exhibit 5, it's pretty clear that that's not happening with any sort of regular occurrence, right? Because those shoulders are well
Yes.
stabilized and maintained and don't look like that's happening, correct?
Right.
Okay.
That's why I said that 15-foot is just enough. If you look at this photo, the tires are on the pavement, and if you look at the shoulders, you're not getting tire ruts, which means people aren't driving on the shoulder, which means the driveway is functioning the way it should be.
I'd like to ask that applicant's exhibit 5 please be entered.
And we will accept that into evidence.
Thank you. Pete, in your opinion, is it against the best environmental principles to add impervious surface when it's not necessary?
Yes, that has become, with the enactment of the new stormwater management ordinance, that is one of the primary concerns, is to try to reduce the amount of impervious surface wherever possible.
And is there anything about requesting this access drive variance, in your opinion, that would be against or would threaten the public health, safety, or welfare?
I do not believe so. What we also intend to do is, with the new facility and the entrance to the new building, we would keep that driveway a little bit wider, maybe 20 feet, so the cars could, again, pull in while someone's pulling out, and that you would have room. And again, you could sit there and queue if you saw traffic.
Understood. Okay, thank you. Pete, I'm turning you to what's been marked as applicant's exhibit 6, which Mr. Olds was asking some questions about earlier, so we're gonna walk through this a bit. But is it accurate that this is a little summation that you put together in reviewing the trip generation manual to determine whether you think that the county will require a traffic impact analysis as part of the site development plan process?
Yes. This is actually, this calculation is a requirement on the site development plan.
Okay.
And so what I do, and I'm not a traffic engineer, but I take the traffic engineer's trip generation manual. I look at the peak hour flows. So you have a morning peak and an evening peak. For assisted living facilities, the evening peak, there seems to be more trips into and out of the site in the evenings between the hours roughly of of 6 to 8
All
PM.
right, hold on. Before we get to the details, I just want everybody to understand the process. So if this approval is granted here today, we will submit a site development plan to the county. The site development plan will go through a technical review process, and part of that process is the county determining whether they are requiring the preparation of a traffic impact analysis, correct?
Yes.
And what they do in determining that is you prepare this information for them. They then would review this information and either agree or disagree with you. And based on this information that we've got here, if they agree with you, there would be no traffic impact analysis requested. But if they thought the counts were different and we had a back and forth, it's possible that in certain instances, they would require a traffic impact analysis.
Correct, correct.
Okay.
The county typically, if your trips, peak hour trips generated are greater than 25 trips per hour, they usually require a traffic study.
Okay.
Between 0 and 25, it's up to their discretion. So depending on your particular use, like you could actually run trucks in and out, they may require a traffic study, that sort of thing. But based on these calculations, we had a maximum PM weekday peak hour trips of 11
Okay.
trips per hour.
So I just want to make sure everybody has a good handle on this document. So what you did is there is in the traffic industry field, there is an accepted manual that's called the Trip Generation Manual that provides counts and calculations for different uses based on real-life studies that they have done over the years for these uses, correct?
That is correct. And then they break these studies down into independent variables.
Right. So so what you did is you found the relevant data for an assisted living facility, and you conducted sort of an analysis to decide what you thought the trip counts were to see whether a traffic impact study is going to be required or not.
Yes, and I did that for all 32 beds.
Right.
For the
That's
existing facility.
exactly where I was headed, Pete. So if you look to the sort of last 3 points in this memo, you have provided the peak hour trip count based on a 32-bed facility, correct?
That is correct.
And based upon the counts that you have provided, it's your conclusion that it is unlikely that there will be a traffic impact analysis required as part of the site plan because this is a low traffic generating use, correct?
That is correct. And I just want to point out that we also have a resident family, but typically your peak hour trips for any residents are people going to work, and Michiko has plenty of work at home.
Michiko works at home, right, so perhaps even lower, okay.
So we don't have that typical, in and out.
Understood. I would like to ask that applicant's exhibit 6 please be entered.
And we will accept that into evidence.
Thank you. Pete, are you familiar and have you had the opportunity to work on other assisted living style developments in Carroll County or beyond?
Yes.
Okay. And in your opinion, I guess, in comparing other projects, do you find that the density proposed here is greater, less than?
It is, per acre, it's certainly less than most assisted living facilities.
Okay.
And it's, the important point is that the property can support the proposed expansion.
Are you aware and familiar with the standards set in the case of Schultz v. Pritz?
Yes.
Okay. And in your opinion, are you aware or did you hear today any adverse effects of this use greater than any other assisted living anywhere else in Carroll County?
I do not see where this site is problematic in any respects.
Okay. Is there anything that you heard testified to or that you're aware of that you believe is more intense related to this use than any other assisted living? Like intense, like more traffic? Is there more noise?
Not really. I mean, the assisted living facilities are very low impact to the communities. They're low traffic generators. They typically have very little noise. And, you know, they actually are very good neighbors.
That concludes our presentation of testimony.
Okay, board members, Mr. Colwell.
Yeah, a number of questions. Just for clarification, what is the length of the driveway from Bell Street to the entrance of the proposed parking area?
You're asking to the new
New one,
proposed,
yes.
new proposed entrance. From the edge of road, it's roughly, I'm gonna say 300 feet plus or minus, maybe 325, something in that neighborhood.
300 feet from Bell Road to the, okay, how far is it from Bell Road to the existing property?
So the existing turnaround or
Yeah.
circle?
Circle, yes.
Yeah. It's where 1 inch equals 100 feet, so we're roughly 650, 700 feet to the center line of the circle.
So about 650, okay. So it's probably more like 700 feet to the building itself, right?
I'm sorry,
700 feet to the building itself?
700 feet to the,
From Bell Road to the existing building is about
oh, to the
700?
existing building. I was taking you to the center line of the circle. So to the existing building, we're probably 750 feet,
750 feet,
yes.
okay. You had mentioned that you were going to create 17 spaces. How many spaces are actually required for the facility? Was it something like 6 or 7?
For each facility would be approximately,
So you've got 17 spaces, that's like 450 feet away, sorry, half of those spaces would be 450 feet away from the existing building?
well, what we have is the parking requirements are for both buildings combined. So the parking tabulation that I stated were for both buildings and the site overall.
Okay,
Because the parking requirements are one parking space per 4 beds, we essentially have 4 parking spaces required for each building. In other words, everything has been divided up with employees all considered. So, as I said, the parking requirements are 1 space per 4 beds and 1 parking space per 2 employees, I believe it was, or. So the fact that we believe we've provided adequate parking for each building independently, and combined, we meet the parking requirements.
okay, understood. Next question is concerning the location of this new building. It seems to be squeezed into the corner of the lot. Is there any reason for that?
Oh, I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
The new building that's proposed seems to be essentially right up against pretty close to the building restriction line. Is that correct? I'm looking at a
Yes,
small
yes.
diagram here, I can't read it.
Yes, that is correct. We are pinched in to that space. There's several factors that affect this. The first of which, there's a culvert under the existing driveway. And we kind of have a swale that was created to funnel the water into the culvert pipe. So you can see the culvert is shown on the plan. The culvert pipe actually has a bend in it, a 45-degree bend, because the channel essentially changed, switched. So we did that. So given the fact that we have this channel, we could barely fit, we had to move the building up to the minimum building line because of the swale. And the only other option we would have would be to put the building on the other side of the driveway. But then we would be further from our septic area and our, our proposed, you know, just,
Well,
we
and-
would have to pump further.
And Pete, I'll say that also, excuse me, part of Melson's testimony is that the goal here is to create that residential feel and residential setting. So it was important to them in looking at the site layout to have the parking in the rear so that from the entrance, it just appears like a house. And so that residents who are sitting on that front porch just feel like they're at home sitting on a front porch, not looking into a parking lot.
Right, okay.
And again, it also, based on Melson's testimony, the idea was to continue to have that agricultural land contiguous to itself for taking the hay, feeding the
Okay.
cows.
One last question. How close is the building in the adjacent lot?
To the existing proposed building,
Yes,
it would be roughly at least 250 feet.
250 feet.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a variance required on that
There
one?
is no, all of the setbacks are met in this case.
They are all met?
Yes.
Okay, I was just curious. I have no further questions, thank you.
A couple.
Go ahead, Mr. Snyder.
We've talked about parking a lot. You're comfortable with you'll have adequate space available to you to provide the required parking without interfering with any of the infrastructure such as the drain field and so forth, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We've heard a lot about density and so forth. It's one heck of a drain field. I mean, that drain field has to be absolutely massive. Is the limiting factor for the number of beds that can be expanded or that are being added based on the ability to provide adequate drain field for the septic?
Okay, you're asking about the septic system, am I?
Well, what I'm asking is this. We've talked a lot about density. It could be this, it could be that, and so forth. What I'm asking is, in your opinion, is the number or size of the added facility limited by the ability of the lot to basically be functionally support the drainage system?
Yes, the lot is, we have, for the most part, maximized
That's
the capacity.
exactly where I'm going. Thank you.
Yes, yes, we have a preliminary plan, and unfortunately, this plan doesn't show all the percolation tests, but this property was, or before Melson purchased it, was originally being developed as a residential subdivision. And so there were numerous percolation tests done throughout the property. And what we found based on the percolation tests was the fact that you hit pockets of good soil. And so where you got passing tests, these areas were clustered. And then you would have bad tests, bad tests, bad tests, also clustered. But for the most part, given the proposed use, we were able to take advantage of the fact that we had, clustered passing perk tests, which would allow for large sewage disposal areas, which lend itself very well for an assisted living facility.
Understood. And it's not a battle to fight here. Obviously, that's handled, past us. It was just a point of information. Relative to the driveway, did you take the picture?
I'm sorry, did I?
Take the picture?
I took the picture, yes.
How long did it take to get these cars lined up just for Anyway, notwithstanding.
Yeah, no, I took the picture. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I staged it with my secretary. And she came out there, and of course, lo and behold, I had to pull up next to her, but leave enough space for me to get out of the car, which I did. And then, while I'm taking the picture, of course, here comes another car coming out of the
I
drive.
see that. I don't want to say anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's safe to say that although the trip count, whatever the right terminology is predicated upon the use of both facilities, the reality is, again, philosophically, half that count is for a facility that is only halfway back to driveway.
Correct.
Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
So the trips isn't all the way back and all the way out and all that goes with it. And you do have some shoulder to drive on. I really doubt two cars are gonna pass that close together, but we'll let that go at that.
It-
Pete,
Yes, I mean, I believe,
I don't think that was a question.
yeah,
I think we're good.
it's like this. My philosophy on these use in commons, and it's funny because you see them, and people always ask you how much is enough, or how much is too much, or whatever. And a lot of jurisdictions, Howard County, for example, I believe Frederick County too, they go to a 16-foot use in common, which allows for two cars to pass. And we came across the 15-foot. We originally were doing a project in the city of Westminster, and it was the fire chief came to me and said, hey, you know what? We'd like you to make this 12-foot driveway a little wider so that our outriggers, if we have to fight a fire, can sit on the pavement instead of getting stuck in the mud and dirt, and turns things kind of out of balance. And so we said, okay, we'll make it 15 foot. And when we made it 15 foot, I remember, going back and looking at the driveway and doing surveys and things, and I found that 15 foot's enough for two cars to pass. And the good thing about 15 foot is that when you do pass, you have to go very slowly, so you don't need speed bumps, and, people aren't racing back and forth. So, given Melson's model, which is to create a homestead or a feeling of a farm and a home, the 15-foot driveway lends itself to that entire concept, that this looks more like a driveway rather than a road. I believe as you get wider, especially 18 foot, you're going to have the entire appearance of a commercial roadway and commercial site. And I think that's kind of, the goal is to make sure we have enough, but also try not to destroy the feeling.
I just have a
Mr.
quick-
Rolls.
Just one clarification, on the entrance to the new building, 15 feet once you're in, on the plan, it looks like you mentioned what I'm calling an apron coming into that new building. It's a little wider, is it gonna be, or?
Yes.
As you were thinking about it,
Yes, no,
you're leaning towards kind of duplicating what comes in from Bell Road?
Yes, the way that the parking works, typically they want us to have 18 foot for the parking space and 24 foot for ingress and egress to the parking lot. So we've got that 24 feet, we're gonna probably neck that down to 20 feet, and we come out. What happens, and what I've seen from these designs, is that as cars make turns, they need a little bit wider space. So, you pull into parking space, your space is maybe 9 foot, but we would prefer to give them 10 foot or a little bit wider because of the turning movement. And given the fact that they're gonna be on a 15-foot driveway, there's not a whole lot of space. Like for example, with the 24-foot aisle, most people who pull into the parking
Right,
spot,
once you're in, yeah.
they're not right up against the parking spot. They're usually, or they may pull out and around and in. So we want to give them, like I said, room for stacking and someone to be able to turn in. And, my philosophy has always been, it's at the entrances that I think you really want to provide stacking and, and allow vehicles to make these movements, because that's where you queue up, and that's where you probably spend your most time with respect to the driveway, waiting, and so you don't want to create situations where you're backing onto the public street, or in our case, you may be providing some type of blockage for an emergency vehicle,
Right, thanks.
So,
That
so
clarifies it.
we've taken all that into consideration, and, as I said, we trying to create a situation here that's a little bit unusual, but I think it's worthwhile.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Podolak.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Miller, do you have any other witnesses?
No, that concludes our presentation of testimony.
Okay, so presentation of testimony and evidence is now closed and summations are in order. Ms. Miller.
Thank you very much. I think we've gone through all of the relevant information and questions, and we appreciate your attention to this. I will point out that in the introduction of the file, we heard a comment memo from the Department of Planning that this use is consistent with the master plan, so I did want to point that out to you. This is a use that I think you've heard all of the relevant testimony in terms of being able to make a judgment that these owners and operators are very passionate about this use and take the operation of this facility very seriously. And I really believe that this is a benefit to the community to have it existing there and also have it expand on this site. I will speak from a personal perspective. My grandfather was in this facility many years ago, and we had a fantastic experience through his time there. So I would ask that this board approve the conditional use request for the assisted living facility and approve the variance, the access drive variance from the 18-foot wide requirement to the 15-foot, keeping in mind that nothing about the site is changing in terms of we will maintain that 20-foot wide access at Bell Road, and it's the full intent for the site development plan to process, as Mr. Olds pointed out, with that wider point of access into the parking lot as well, to allow for safe movements of all vehicles. So with that, we would respectfully request your approval here today. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. The hearing and record of this case is now closed. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act of Maryland, the board will now consider the case. Mr. Caldwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've addressed Schultz v. Pritt, so I'm not going to get further with that. We'll know about that one. For this facility, there seemed to be a little bit of conflict between not expanding the driveway width, but making a larger parking lot than is required. Because it seems like a long distance, 450 feet from that parking lot to get to the main, the primary building, seemed a little unusual. I won't go any further than that on that issue. Just I thought it was curious. You've considered the issues about people turning. I've seen that, even on Route 40, they come into adjacent lane to make a left turn. It's ridiculous how people drive these days. But you seem to have accommodated that, hopefully at lower speeds, that they're not going to be quite so wild in their driving techniques. You've addressed the issues about the placement of the building. You're far enough away from the adjacent properties not to have variance requirements there. You're dealing with a site that has difficulties in terms of where you can place buildings because of the soil conditions, culvert, so on and so forth. You've addressed that. I don't see any reason not to approve your request for the variance for the driveway width and the operation of this additional 16-bed facility.
Mr. Snyder.
I'm very satisfied with the testimony that we received today. It seems like a good fit. It's a need in the community. I don't see any neighbors complaining or having concerns relative to the operation the way it's operated for some years. I do not have a problem with the, notwithstanding the humor, I do not have a problem with the driveway. I do, I don't have a problem because of the widened entrance and length of that widened entrance off of Bell Road. I would have had a concern otherwise. Based on the testimony, I just don't have a problem with the approval or the variance.
Mr. Olds.
I would concur with Mark, and I think the widening of the entrance is real crucial, helpful. EMS, I mean, there's probably going to be more frequent trips, EMS related, as things go along. but you're not having a lot now, but, you know, that gives some credence to that, so I would vote for approval.
Ms. Zens, anything to add?
No, I agree.
Very good. Couple of things. I think it was demonstrated through the testimony today that this definitely meets the Schultz v. Pritz standards. The other thing that I thought was very interesting, Mr. Podolak, even though he's not a traffic engineer, made the observation that the sides of the existing 15-foot driveway did not have ruts in them in the grassy area adjacent to it, which demonstrates that what is there at 15 feet is working very well, and this proposed new facility is not all the way back where the existing facility is. So I appreciate that. I like that. I like that comment. He was being Mr. Detective, inspecting the blades of grass next to the driveway. So with that, I see absolutely no reason to not approve this. And the other thing that was explained very well to us is the limitations of the septic, the location of the septic, and how that drove the location of the new 16-bed facility on site. Okay. Any other questions or any other comments, board members?
No.
Okay, very good. Mr. Caldwell?
Any motion?
Yes.
In case number 6577, before the Board of Zoning Appeals, that the board approve the conditional use of a 16-bed building and the driveway, the variance for the driveway width.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, aye.
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 All opposed, no. The motion carries. Our oral decision will become final upon a written decision, which will be issued within 30 days unless otherwise extended by this board. And the board's decision may be appealed by filing a petition for judicial review with the clerk of the circuit court for Carroll County in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 200, Title 7 of the Maryland Rules of Procedure. The appeal must be filed within 30 days of the date of the board's written decision. Thank you very much, and this hearing is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.